many levels, both governmental and private, China is working to assist the rest of the world in combating the coronavirus pandemic. Officially and unofficially, it is sharing its own experience of what has worked, as well as sending medical teams abroad and donating medical supplies where needed. What could China's assistance mean for global pandemic control? And what else can be done in promoting international cooperation against the pandemic? To discuss these issues and more, I'll be talking to Yao Fei, Chargé d'Affaires of the Chinese Embassy in Spain from Madrid, Chen Hong, Chairman and CEO of the Haina Group from Beijing, and Deng Haijun, Managing Director of SMEs Europe from Cologne, Germany. That's our topic. This is a dialogue. I'm Yang Rui. Mr. Yao, China is voluntarily sharing its pandemic control experience with other countries by holding, for example, teleconferences, sending medical teams abroad, and translating the latest diagnosis and treatment plans into different languages. How do you view this? In addition to experience sharing, what else should be highlighted in our international cooperation against the pandemic?
I think to win the joint battle against the coronavirus needs to coordinate the policies and actions of all countries and enhance the prevention in those developing countries. China has offered its help to some European countries, including Spain. The Chinese President Xi Jinping and the Spanish President Pedro Sanchez held a telephone conversation. And before that, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of our two countries also had a telephone communication. And besides, China is also willing to share its experience in the struggle against the virus. And I think between China and the European countries, we can also develop cooperation, such as in the vaccine research and development. And if the Spanish government requests, China is willing to send a medical team to join the Spanish struggle against the virus.
In the past 2 weeks, Mr. Yao, we've witnessed a sharp increase in confirmed cases in Spain. Why is that?
There are some characteristics in Spain. First, rapid growth in total. Spain has ranked the second in Europe within 1 week. And second, many senior officials infected, just like the wife of the president, the vice president, and a lot of members of his Congress, and some chairmen of autonomous region government. And the third characteristic is the capital Madrid is of the worst situation in whole Spain because it represents 50% of all the confirmed and death cases in Spain and 80% of all the cases with severe symptoms. According to Spanish Ministry of Health, along with the full-scale testing to the people with mild symptoms, the number of confirmed cases will continue to increase. I think there are some reasons for this rapid spread of the virus in Spain. According to the statistics, 90% of the confirmed cases in Spain are imported from Italy. And after that, the celebration of football matches and the March 8th parade has got the situation even worse. And thirdly, those people with mild symptoms were suggested to stay at home, and that measure could not cut off totally the source of infection. To stop the spread of the virus, the key to stop the spread of the virus is to cut off the transmission. So that's why the Chinese government has taken measures like blocking the whole city, stopping the public transportation, suspending work and class, canceling group activities, and setting up mobile cabin hospitals. Spanish government has also taken some measures that I just mentioned, but they can isolate totally the people with mild symptoms, and the public transportation has not been stopped. So I think there remains some possibility of infection. And we note the Madrid autonomous region government has transformed some local hotels into mobile cabin hospitals. I think that is a very good practice that should be promoted across the country as soon as possible.
There's obviously a lot to be learned or to be shared between our two countries and governments. By the way, we've seen most European countries overtly change their attitude towards the coronavirus from indifference to seriousness. What has prompted the change in their mind and attitude, and how do you view the change?
To deal with the COVID-19 is a brand new topic to the governments of all the countries. And China, with its tremendous struggle against the virus, has saved a precious time window for all the world. But it's a great pity that most of the European countries haven't made a good use of that time window. And obviously, they didn't pay enough attention to the high contagion and the great harm of the virus. But in the past half months, the rapid spread of the epidemic in Europe has forced the European governments to take strict measures to respond. We hope these measures can work as soon as possible.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yao Fei, chargé d'affaires of the Chinese Embassy in Madrid, for updating us about the latest development in curbing the spread of coronavirus in Spain. Up next, we are very happy to be joined by Mr. Chen Hong, President and CEO of the Hana Group. Mr. Chen, as the number of COVID-19 cases outside China continues to soar, more and more Chinese enterprises and entrepreneurs such as Alibaba co-founder Jack Ma, who is donating masks and test kits to the US, Europe, and Africa, contribute medical supplies to coronavirus-stricken countries. As an entrepreneur, how do you look at this?
I think this kind of epidemic is kind of global. It is not something specific to a country, to a religion, to a political party or anybody, anything. When the early days where the virus outbreak in China, a lot of enterprises domestically in China have contributed quite a bit to Wuhan for supplying medical supplies and others. But now we've seen the outbreak is growing up very, very fast outside China. Right now, doubling the size of the total numbers in China already. So the Chinese entrepreneurs such as Alibaba, Fosun Group, Xiaomi, and many others have taken an initiative to really, by knowing and understanding where the supplies of those medical masks, others are, and starting outputting to that to US, to other places. Understand that Alibaba, for instance, has contributed about 500,000 testing kits, plus over 1 million masks to the United States. And this is something where I think all of us care quite a bit about. We're trying to help as much as we can.
It's not just something a friend in need is a friend indeed, but also, I'm afraid, a part of the corporate social responsibility in the international sense. Don't you think so?
Yes, indeed. I think Alibaba and Tencent and many others, they're global companies today. They're serving clients, customers on a global basis. And also, they are, from the market cap perspective, they are big companies also globally. So those companies, I think, as you grow to a certain stage, you start to take some social responsibility to help as the crisis came. For instance, Bill Gates is a U.S. entrepreneur and a business person. He's one of the first to contribute to China when the virus got outbreak in China. So this is something where it would not differentiate where you are coming from. As long as you are an important institution on the global stage, you should contribute. I think that was Alibaba and Xiaomi, Huawei, Fosun, and many others, what they're doing today.
Having said this, Chen Hong, as we can see now, China's central bank is pumping more and more cash flow into the market via RRR cut and MLF. So what does this mean for SMEs, which are most vulnerable to a prolonged shutdown? And in what ways can investment institutions such as your Hana Group support their investors, SMEs, to overcome the difficulties together?
Yang Rui, I have to say that the SMEs in China actually get impacted a lot during this coronavirus outbreak. There's a study by Tsinghua University and Peking University in February. It reported that about a third of the SMEs, they only have a cash reserve of about 1 month. The other third is probably about another month, 2 months, right? So as those small SMEs, their business is pretty much predictable in the past. Now suddenly, a situation come in where there's no revenue. However, all the cost, labor cost, rentals, everything else are there. So that was a big issue even for the survival of those small, medium-sized businesses. The Chinese banks actually, they're pouring a lot of money into the market. Actually, I form a system where allow the variety of government, even the private equity and VC firms such as us, to contact those companies which we invested in, providing those companies with the financing from the banks. Normally the high-tech companies don't get money from the banks. They get it from the venture capitalists, they get it from private equity firms, all as equity. But now with the crisis coming so suddenly, they need to get it from the banks. For us, what we did was that we actually, after the holiday, we get our guys, our professionals, made the call to each of the CEOs of those companies which we invested in, asking for their cash flow status, the business, everything else. And actually, we also invested 4 companies during this particular stage. I guess this could be one of the, we call it social responsibility, making some of those companies have plenty of cash supply of 12 months to get over this coronavirus outbreak.
Chen Hong, let me just ask one follow-up question concerning the image of Chinese entrepreneurs. As we see the expansion of our global business stakes around the world, it's something good to benefit the globalization in terms of a global supply chain. Now, what would you say to your counterparts in European markets or in North America, what should be done further to protect yourselves and to protect your friends and colleagues in the host country? Because we see the growing pains of a negative impact upon the image of Chinese people and particularly entrepreneurs.
I think again, coming to my point is that I think this pandemic, it is not something specific to a country. It is really a global, we'll call it disaster. And so we, as every citizen, every entrepreneur, and every business people worldwide, no matter which country you are today, you're not getting away with this pandemic situation. So what we needed to do is to work together to make sure that we contain the outbreak of the viruses so that every country will be similar to China as is today, having the newer cases going to 0 and really starting back to our entire normal life. Otherwise, the global financial systems will be hitting hard this time by the virus, because it's unlike 2008. By putting money by the central government and others to make the liquidity work, we'll be fine. Today, there are financial crises, but also there are a real situation where all the places are kind of locked down, even including California. Just heard that 40 million people of California being asked by the governor to stay home and isolate themselves.
As the coronavirus spread almost everywhere, becoming a pandemic, global demand and world supply chains may take a hit. And that's a big challenge for China's manufacturers and exporters. So what are the prospects for China's manufacturing and export, and how do you evaluate the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on global economy? That's a very big question, but I'd like to have your thoughts.
Your question, it is very big. I think, in my view, that the impact of the coronavirus today, in a certain way, probably could be more serious than that of 2008 financial crisis, in a sense that it is a combination of the real economy and with the financial industry together. The Chinese economy, as you know, are composed of three components. Number one is clear the consumer side consumption, which being hit pretty hard by the coronaviruses. And then the second portion will be the investment. And the third one actually will be the import-export. For the last 2 months, it is where the China's kind of been shutting down, and then the export of Chinese goods, because the factories are kind of closing down, was getting lesser, probably by the percentage, probably I think 16%. However, today the situation is really going out of China. Now it's a lot of countries kind of being locked up today. So it is not the China's supply chain or the manufacturing jobs getting impacted. It's globally every country. If you're an Italian company, for instance, if you're making a product, you have 99 components ready. The lacking one component will not make a product fly. So that's something where, we're very, very concerned about the global financial situation. That's why it is very important for all the countries, the institutions, everything else, not blaming each other, not trying to find whose fault, etc. But today, you can't have a decision right away. You can't find it right away. It is a long scientific question. But working together as a unity to make sure that we calm down the crisis very, very fast, getting the economy back to the normal.
Given the huge impact of a trade war between the two biggest economies, as well as the latest nosedive in the American stock markets and the oil shocks, in your estimation, despite our overwhelming emphasis on the importance of domestic spending, and we are clearly aware of the huge domestic savings, to what degree do you think our export-led growth would be further impacted negatively? Because, as you said earlier, we are in the same boat, be it Chinese companies or European or American investors or trade issues. We are in the same boat, facing the same enemy. How do you assess the external threats and their impact upon our economic growth in the second and third quarters?
Right. So the first, the quarter of China, we feel like the GDP growth could be lesser to even or drop a little bit from last year. We'll get over the coronaviruses by the end of March and start moving normally back to work, everything else in the second quarter. But today, with the global coronavirus outbreak as is today, I don't think the second quarter will just be normal. So as a result, Chinese import-export will be further impacted by the outbreak, and will be impacted in the second quarter. So it is an issue. So as a result, I think that China itself is trying to get back normal for the consumer part of the GDP growth, but also on the other side, making sure that we have new investments, infrastructure investment, we call it new infrastructure investment, into play so that we can get the GDP growth back to normal.
Yes, indeed. Business life in China is quickly back to normal. However, there's still a lot of unpredictability about our increasing ties with the overseas markets in terms of how to resume our business operations very quickly and to sustain instead of decoupling the internationalization or globalization to a large degree. Thank you very much, Chen Hong, for updating us on your views on particularly the economic performance of SMEs and the impact of coronavirus pandemic. Welcome to our last part of the discussion here with Mr. Deng Haijun, Managing Director of SME Group Europe. China's SME Group donated 50,000 medical masks to Germany. Why Germany? And how do you see the anti-pandemic assistance at the level of enterprises in Europe?
Since 2006, SME Group, we set sales branches in Germany to start our international business. And later in 2009, we decided to invest 100 million euro in Germany to build a manufacturing and R&D center. And in 2012, we acquired one of the German company, Putzmeister. And then we become the king of the concrete pump since then. So we're growing in this land, and we love Germany, and we love German people. So that is the reason we choose Germany as the first part of donation.
In other words, Deng, is it true that we see the largest concentration of your business operations in Germany, which is your biggest business partner in Europe, in continental Europe, and hence you quickly grasp the opportunity and come up with humanitarian assistance, first and foremost in Germany?
Yes. We first set up in Germany, and we're growing up in here. And we have a very strong bond with this community. So personal relationship, we feel much emotional, connected with the German people.
We understand the human-to-human feelings and business interconnectivity between SME and Germany. That doesn't come as a surprise, as Germany is known for having the ability to deliver heavy machinery. Now, what else can you tell us? For example, what anti-pandemic measures are now in place in Germany? And how do people view them? Because we see the very rapid spread of a coronavirus virus in many parts of Europe, in particular Germany, which is known for its reputation and ability to handle major crises like the asylum-seeking tsunami a few years ago. But this time around, it's yet another major crisis. How do you look at the ability of the German federal government in handling the crisis?
So far, I think the German government did a very good job. And he make their appropriate strategy based on the best of the technology and the current situation. We can see the very low mortality rate is still very low, and that is a very positive sign in here. And I look around, this inside the SME, include Putzmeister, we have more than 2,000 employees. And so from all my colleagues and all the friends living in this community, I saw them is very calm to follow up the instruction from the government. And I didn't see any panic around. So at this moment, I feel much confident for the situation we are facing.
The federal government cannot order Germans to behave the way the Chinese authorities carried out the tasks at the level, for example, of Hubei, Shanghai, and Beijing. Do you believe it's rather the individual independent judgment, decision-making process by the states rather than the federal government that would shape the prospects of the anti-pandemic campaign?
I think this is a totally different systems
Sure.
compared with China. And even the culture is totally different compared with the Chinese people. Be honest, I think the local people, like in German people, they are more optimistic and they have less cautious for this, we call it the pandemic, but they just take maybe a little bit worse than flu. So for this personal reality, they think that it will be not much worse than any disaster happened in Europe. So far, even we can see the numbers growing every day, but the people really take this just a little bit a challenge. I don't see they take this as much seriously pandemic. So that is compared with the Chinese people. I was living in China last month, and compare with the mentality, I feel that it's different. But of course, we can see the result after this pandemic slowed down, and this period at the end, we can come back to see or to measure what is the difference or what kind of different effort we offer is make a different result.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deng, for briefing us on your humanitarian efforts at this defining moment of the bilateral business-to-business relationship between Germany and China. We are not returning to a Cold War in its simple sense, but let me remind you, at the height of the Cold War, JFK, former US president, said in Berlin, "Ich bin ein Berliner," 我是一个柏林人. And this time around, we were deeply impressed by a punchline cited by the Sanyee Group Europe, which says in German, "Berg und Tal kommen nicht zusammen, weil aber die Mountain." Mountains are not necessarily interconnected, but people will have to meet somewhere in the world. Thank you for being with us. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.